together. I was buried beneath my shame. Who could carry that kind of weight? It was mine till I met. I was breathing but not alive. All my failures I tried to hide. It was mine till I met you. Sing it out, you called my name, and you called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness, into your glorious day. You called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness, into your glorious day. Now your mercy, now your mercy has saved my soul. Now your freedom is all that I know. Amen. The old name knew Jesus when I met you, and you called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness, into your glorious day. You called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness, into your glorious day. Let's sing this out as our testimony this morning. I needed rescue, my sin was heavy. The chains break at the weight of your glory. I needed shelter, I was in order. Now you call me a citizen of heaven. When I was broken, you were my healing. Now your love is the air that I'm breathing. I have a future, my eyes are open, and when you call my name, I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness, into your glorious day. You called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness, into your glorious day. Amen. What a reason to celebrate. Amen. Amen. As we continue to worship this morning, I want to read for us out of Romans 6, verse 4. It says, "We were buried, therefore, with him by baptism into death, in order that just as Christ was raised from the dead by the glory of the Father, we too might walk in newness of life." We sang about that newness in life that we have this morning. We know that God has been faithful. We know that he is faithful, and we know that he will be faithful to us. We can trust him for greater things. And let's continue to sing about that this morning together. We pray together. Heavenly Father, may that be true in our hearts this morning, Lord. That we would not rely on our own confidence and our own competence, Lord. But we understand, Lord, that we can trust you. We can rely on your strength. I pray, Lord, that this morning that you help us to develop a deeper dependence on you, a deeper understanding of you, a deeper understanding of your grace and your love and your mercy and the life that you speak to us, Lord, that you want us to speak to those around us, Lord. I pray that you help us to know our responsibility to not keep that to ourselves, Lord. We love you, Heavenly Father. We give you this service, Lord. We pray that you just continue to move the way that you're already moving. And everyone said, amen. Thank you so much for singing with us and worshiping with us this morning. We can celebrate that. I see a couple people clapping. Amen.
Well, one of the things that we do here at Pathway is we take communion occasionally. And it's a deeply powerful and spiritual moment in the life of our church. And so if the ushers would come forward, and they're gonna pass out these trays, and they're gonna have a little cup inside, one with grape juice and one with a little wafer, which represents his body and which represents Jesus Christ's blood. Now, if this is your first time at Pathway, and you're a follower of Jesus, or you've been coming to Pathway since day one and you're a follower of Jesus, communion is for you. We practice open communion, that if you're a believer in Jesus Christ, this is for you. If you're coming to Pathway and you're checking this out and you're going, I'm not sure what it means to have a relationship with the creator of the universe, I would just challenge you to take a few moments while this is taking place, just to reflect on the journey that God has brought you on to this place, to where you're sitting right now. And so we want to take time to celebrate what God has done in our lives through remembering what Jesus did on the cross.
How deep the Father's love for us, how vast beyond all measure, that He should give His only Son to make a wretch His treasure. And how great the pain of searing loss, the Father turned His face away, as wounds which mar the chosen one bring many sons to glory. Behold the man upon the cross, my guilt upon His shoulders. Ashamed I hear my mocking voice call out among the scoffers. It was my sin that held Him there until it was accomplished. His dying breath has brought me alive. I know that it is finished. And it is finished. Oh, and it is finished. Oh, I will not boast in anything, no gifts, no power, no wisdom, but I will boast in Jesus Christ, His death and resurrection. And why should I gain from His I cannot give it answer, but this I know with all my heart. His wounds have paid my ransom, but this I know with all my heart. His wounds have paid my ransom.
And in 1 Corinthians 11, 23 through 26, it says this: "For I pass on to you what I received from the Lord himself on the night when he was betrayed. The Lord Jesus took some bread and gave thanks to God for it. Then he broke it in pieces and said, 'This is my body, which is given for you. Do this to remember me.'" Let us take the bread together. In the same way, he took the cup of wine after supper, saying, "This cup is the new covenant between God and his people, an agreement confirmed with my blood. Do this to remember me as often as you drink of it. For every time you eat this bread and drink this cup, you are announcing the Lord's death until he comes again." Father, it's in this moment that we remember why we're here. Remember the sacrifice that was made and how we are so undeserving of your grace and love and mercy through your Son, Jesus Christ. May that be forever etched on our heart. That moment when we entered into a relationship with you, all because of Jesus. And so may we just worship you and love you with all of our being. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, we're going to take the next journey in a part of what we do here at Pathway, and the ushers are going to come forward with buckets to take an offering. And again, if you're here for the first time, this isn't for you. But if you've been coming to Pathway and you call this your home, this is your chance to give back and to be a part of what God is doing on a bigger picture and giving to make a difference for his name. Well, we're in the middle of a series called Satisfied, and we have a special guest with us. His name is Dr. Tim Elmore. He's become a good friend of Pathways. We're so excited he's here. If you were here last October, you got to hear him talk about helping the next gen win. And Dr. Tim Elmore, he is a part of many school administrations, colleges, helping leaders, teachers, businesses, but he also gets to help out with pro athletic teams. And I want to give you one more reason to cheer for the Rams tonight. Like I really need to give you one. But the Los Angeles Rams, they're currently using this year the Habitudes, which Tim has developed. It is an image that teaches a habit and attitude which develops leadership skills. And they've been going through that program this season and making that really kind of a unifying rally behind what they're doing. So it's going to be just part of hearing more about that from Tim and really hearing about developing an identity for the emerging generation.
Thank you. You don't know what it does for a speaker to have done nothing and get applause. It's just amazing. Kind of like having your mom in the audience. How we doing? You survived the cold? It's balmy today. Thank you for having balmy weather for me. I live in Atlanta, Georgia. We shut down if we see one snowflake. We just shut down. Okay, so Byron already told you we're in the midst of a series called Satisfied. It's really about identity. And what I'd like to do is apply building a healthy sense of identity to the next generation. So I'm hoping that you care about the next generation, you care about the future. So many of you are parents, you have an innate care for the next generation, they're in your home. Some of you are grandparents, some of you are aunts or uncles, some of you are coaches or teachers or youth workers. All of you, I would think in this room, would say, this is relevant for me. I'd like you to not only apply what I'm about to say to your own life and development, but also specifically to the emerging generation. In our focus groups with middle school and high school students over the last 2 years, 2017 and 2018, we found out that the vast majority of the students we talk to say they derive their primary sense of identity from social media. That's a little scary, isn't it? It's kind of a roller coaster experience, wouldn't you say? On the comments you're getting, the likes, the unlikes, or whatever. But yeah, it's not from my family's name. It's not from where I sit in the lunchroom. It's not from the football team I play on. It's from social media. We're in a brand new day where virtual connections are sometimes replacing real connections. So this is why I think this subject is so critical. This whole idea of identity. And my title is Who Before What? We live in a country, and by the way, I love America, but we live in a country, particularly in the 21st century, where I think you would agree, we usually put what before who. What do you do? Come on, guys, what do you do? What's your name? What do you do? We ask that, don't we? We ask college students, not who are you, but what are you majoring in? I have to say it with that voice, in fact, my point is, we are so caught up in the doing, in the image, in the appearance of it all, that selfie. All I'm saying is we're so caught up in that, sometimes we miss the very root issue of what we ought to be paying attention to. And I believe if we would settle the who issue, the what will actually take care of itself. And I wasn't the first one to say that. Our master, Jesus, said it 2,000 years ago. So let's jump in. I actually want to do one of these habitudes, one that the Los Angeles Rams have gone through this year. We'll see if it pays off tonight, okay? But this is one that, especially if you're a person of faith, makes total sense. But I think it makes sense to anybody, inside or outside of faith. I call this particular image root and fruit. Root and fruit. I want you to gaze at this photograph here. It's a really cool picture, I think, of a tree. It's actually a tree that's in Hawaii. A few years ago, I took my family to Hawaii for a vacation. It was really fun. We were celebrating a couple of graduations, so we spent a week in Honolulu, but we decided to leave the city, some of you have done this, and go to the other part of the island that visitors rarely go to. We got to see wooded areas and beach areas, and this tree is there. And the reason I loved it is because you can see the tree, the part of the tree that you always see. The branches, the leaves, the fruit, the trunk. But because it had been washed away down here, you could literally see the entire root system underneath the tree. You saw the tree in its totality. Now, I'm gonna say what you already know, but I'm setting the foundation for this talk. You would agree, wouldn't you, that this part is actually the most important part of the tree. The longevity of its life, its height, its breadth, all of that rests on the stuff that you really never see. We all see this. We love picking apples from apple trees or oranges from orange trees. We love the fruit, but we often pay little attention to the root. Now, I'd like to go deeper, but let me give you the bottom line of this simple image, and I hope it haunts you in a wonderful way the rest of your life, okay? Here's the bottom line. Just like a tree has unseen roots which stabilize it, trunks to give it height, and then fruit to provide its value, so we must prioritize these elements in that order in our lives. Development is about who before it's about what. Can I say that again? Development is about who before what. When you're someone, you'll naturally do something. Now, we have a generation of kids that want to do something. Our generation, when we were kids, wanted to do something that changed the world, that really made a difference, that moved the needle, all those cliches that we use. But I think if it's going to last, we've got to settle this stuff down here before that stuff up there. Now, I want to go deeper. I want to dig deeper, no pun intended. But I'd like to look at this and I want to explain exactly what I'm talking about when I show you this diagram. So I have a diagram of a tree. I believe the root system really has to do with who I am. Now think about it. It's your sense of identity. But think about it. It's underneath the surface. People don't see it right away. In fact, you have to dig to see it. Isn't that true in relationships? Remember the person you married, if you're married? It took several dates and several months before you really got to know who they were because you got to dig beneath the surface. But you see, the deeper the roots and the broader they grow out, the stronger that tree is. All of that stuff happens below the surface. If it's strong, you begin to see a good trunk, and that represents our performance. It's our conduct, it's our behavior. If you have a job, you want to perform well to get that raise. But this is all the trunk. But you know the trunk rests here. Now, ultimately, that trunk gives way or produces leaves and branches and fruit, ultimately the fruit on the branches. And those are outcomes. It's the result of the performance, which is the result of the identity. Hope this makes sense. This is going to be on the final, by the way. Thank you for that little chuckle. I appreciate that. All right. Now, all I'm saying, and I suggested it just briefly before, is this. I love our country. I love the 21st century and all the technology and conveniences it affords us. But it has nudged us as a people to be caught up in this rather than this. My appearance, what seems to be out there. In fact, if we want to see more fruit, we're in such a rush, we're so impatient, we'll just screw on plastic fruit, artificial fruit on the branches. 1/3 of Americans lie on their resume. Did you know that? For the new job. All I'm saying is we didn't know it. We didn't know it, but we got ambushed by this world that we're in, and we're nudged toward being consumed with a quick answer, a quick fix, an appearance, rather than here. And this, quite frankly, requires work, doesn't it? If I'm really gonna work on my sense of identity, it's a lot of digging. Sometimes we find stuff we don't like. Come on, let's get honest. It's almost like, it's almost like getting a letter in the mail that you know contains bad news. You don't want to open that letter. Just put it on the kitchen counter. I'll get to it next year, or whatever. But this is really where we need to focus. And if you're a mom, dad, coach, teacher, whatever, here's what I'm saying. I would love to see you do the work with that next gen kid to really press them on building a healthy sense of identity. Not one that's about appearances, but one that's about authentic growth. Now, that means you're gonna have to build a relationship. We must build bridges of relationship that can bear the weight of truth. That's what we gotta do, and that's work. But let's go deeper. I believe if we'll do this right, it will help us settle the 3 biggest issues of our life, and I'm just gonna offer these to you. I believe identity helps us to navigate the things that are in our control, the things that are out of our control, and the items that are within our influence. Everything that happens to you in your life, everything that happens to your life fits in one of these 3 buckets. It's in your control, you need to take initiative. It's out of your control, you need to trust God, and it's within your influence. It's kind of a middle ground between the first 2. I've got to do something, but I can't control it. Okay, so gentlemen in the room, there's some things that are in your control with your family. You need to take initiative, take responsibility. Your wives will love it. Wives in the room, there's some things that are out of your control. You need to trust. Are you hearing me? Am I stereotyping right now? I thought so, okay. And then finally, what's within your influence? I want to see a generation of kids graduate and just be the most incredible generation ever of adults because they've really settled this issue. That's my hope, that's my prayer, that's my wish. And I'm thinking, what if we just start here at Pathway? We're gonna find somebody from the emerging generation, we're gonna build a relationship, we're gonna go to Starbucks, whatever, and we're gonna begin to help them build this root system so it creates great performance and leads to great fruit. Now, I wasn't the first one to use this image to teach this truth. Our master Jesus did, if you remember, 2,000 years ago in the book of Matthew. Look at what he said. In Matthew chapter 7, he's talking about fruits and trees and everything else. Follow with me as I read, but I'm gonna point out a couple things that just are fascinating that our master would even use this metaphor to talk about our growth. Here's what he says. Jesus said, beware of false prophets who come disguised as harmless sheep, but are really vicious wolves. You can identify them by their fruit. Now notice, you can't see the root, but you can identify them from the fruit. That is, by the way they act. Can you pick grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? A good tree produces good fruit, and a bad tree produces bad fruit. In fact, a good tree can't produce bad fruit, and a bad tree can't produce good fruit. So every tree that does not produce good fruit is chopped down and thrown into the fire. Yes, just as you can identify a tree by its fruit, so you can identify people by their actions. Isn't it interesting that he says a good tree can't bear bad fruit and a bad tree can't bear good fruit? He wasn't saying unscrew the fruit on the end of the branches if you don't like it and just screw on artificial fruit. That'll take care of it. He said the tree itself will tell you. By the way, once the fruits come out, you've kind of revealed yourself. So let me just call time out right now and say this. As an adult, if you look in the mirror in the morning and you're just being real with yourself, do you like who you see? Not just on the outside. I know that's looking worse and worse for me. But when you look at, do you like the man that you become, the woman you become? Do you like what you're doing? Do you like what the outcomes are? Are you getting the fruit that you thought at this stage of your life? Well, I'm going to suggest, if not, you're like most people, we're human, but we're going to need to do some heavy digging and some work on the root stuff before we ever get to the fruit stuff, okay? Now, this is kind of interesting to me. I have worked with students now. I started teaching students in 1979. This is my 40th year. Thank you very much, okay? Yeah. And I'm still living. I'm still surviving. I'm vertical and breathing, okay? Now, no, I'm just kidding. If you're a student in the room, I love you, okay? But I'll never forget Chris. Chris was one of the college students I worked with at San Diego State University in San Diego many years ago. In fact, this would have been the early 90s, maybe late 80s, early 90s, but Chris was really stressed out, much like many college students are today. He was anxious, he was stressed, borderline depression. He was way over-involved. He was overwhelmed by all that he was doing. And I finally sat down with him and said, Chris, I think you need to see a counselor. I really do. I think this would be a great thing. And back then, there was a little more stigma in going to see a counselor than there is today. I don't know. I'm not a mental case. I know you're not a mental case, but you need to go see a counselor. Well, Chris went in to see a counselor, and within the first session, by the end of the session, this counselor said something extremely wise as a diagnosis for Chris's situation. I thought it might apply to you and me. Here's what she said by the end of the session. She said, Chris, I know what the problem is. You become a human doing before you ever been a human being. Interesting. Don't raise your hand, but has anybody ever felt like a human doing in here? You're doing 17 billion things and you're just trying to, and really what you're doing is surviving the day, hoping that you don't look bad to somebody else out there who might be taking a photo for social media. And we get in survival mode rather than thriving with fruit coming out. Not that your life is perfect, but when you're doing well, you have bad days, but fruit's coming out. People watch your life and you're bearing fruit, producing results. Things are happening. And I'm not saying you get famous. I'm not saying you're on TV or you write a best-selling book, but things are happening. And when you get to midlife, you're not having midlife crises, you're having midlife fruitfulness. Does that sound attractive to you? I actually think that's what God wanted for us. So, having said that, I want to dig a little deeper. Again, no pun intended. But I want to show you a diagram that I drew up that I think explains if you've got a young kid, if you've got a teenager, middle school, high school kid, maybe even a college student, and you're seeing poor behavior or bad habits, unhealthy habits, let me explain with this simple diagram, once again, of a plant. So let's say this is a weed growing up top, okay? Poor behavior, unhealthy habits, okay? What you see right there is the weed, okay? And what we're tempted to do is behavior modification. Don't talk that way, or whatever. You fill in the blank. We try to modify the behavior. In fact, sometimes that's as good as it gets. We just try to modify the behavior, keep the attitude in a corral, and make sure they don't say anything they shouldn't say. I'm gonna suggest if you really wanna get to the root of the problem, you gotta dig deeper. Just below the surface are negative attitudes and negative emotions. I'm right about that, right? You don't have to dig very far before you see negative emotions in that teenager, negative attitudes. But if you dig a little bit deeper, what I have found in over 90% of the cases that I work with in 40 years is unforgiveness. Something has happened that they weren't able to let go of. Someone did something or failed to do something they've not been able to forgive and release. And now it's just lodged in there, almost like simmering in a crock pot. And it just stays there, festering. And if you dig deeper, what you find almost in every case is unmet needs. In other words, the reason I can't forgive is that person was supposed to meet a need that I expected them to meet and they didn't meet it. Or that person did something they should not have done and I expected, but somewhere locked here is unmet needs. I've got a void, I've got a vacuum, I've got a hole inside that is not met. And I'm mad or sad, depressed. Sometimes anger is just suppressed depression. But listen, if you go even deeper, if you go even deeper, what you find at root, literally at root of the issue, is personal worth. I just don't feel worthy. I don't feel valuable. In fact, a lot of times you can just take it right back up. This person didn't treat me the right way. Maybe I don't deserve to be treated the way I wanted or expected. But something's happening deep down. And I'm just saying, notice how far deep you need to dig in order to get to that issue. It's not always easy. It's hard conversations. It's a lot of grace that you got to give when really what you'd want to do is just retaliate. But if we're going to raise up the next generation well, moms, dads, grandparents, coaches, teachers, we're going to have to get down here and work here. Now, let me share with you why this is so important. We just talked for a few minutes about fruit and roots. I want to give you a statement that I've come to absolutely believe, and I'm going to illustrate it, and I think you'll say, yep, that statement is true. Think about this statement. Context explains conduct. Context explains conduct. Let me just illustrate. Have you ever met somebody and they're acting a little bit different or so forth, and you go, man, that person's acting different, but then you hear their backstory and you go, oh, no wonder they're doing that. You've thought that before, haven't you? Well, no, it doesn't excuse the behavior, but it does explain the behavior. See the difference? So I, last year, met with a counselor to talk about a situation she was involved in, and she happened to tell me a story. She didn't share the names of this family she was counseling, but she told me their backstory, and it was such an illustration of context explains conduct. This family had come to see this counselor, and they were really at the end of their rope. They were just at odds with each other. There was a lot of conflict in the house, even some violence, but they felt like it started with their 5-year-old son, this young boy, who was running around, almost seemed ADHD. He was screaming and yelling. He was punching the walls in the house. And especially when they talked about going out, he just would go bonkers. He'd either run around and scream or he'd run and hide. And eventually, a few months into these episodes, which they were just not able to explain, they saw him running into the bathroom, especially when they said they were going to go out. And he'd come out, and pardon me, this is a little graphic, but he'd come out having rubbed his own feces on his body. He'd rub his own poop all over his arms and legs. And they said, this kid is, I don't know what's wrong with this kid. Something's wrong with this kid. And so they ran into the counselor and they started meeting as a family. Well, after a few meetings with the counselor, this counselor asked to meet with the 5-year-old boy alone. And when she did, she quickly surmised what was going on. You might be able to guess. She ended up explaining to the mom and dad that the reason this behavior was happening was, and the reason he was wiping the poop on his arm, whenever they went out to family gatherings, and they had several in their town, this little boy's uncle was abusing him, sexually assaulting him as a 5-year-old boy. And the little boy he wasn't stupid. Actually, he was quite smart. He figured the only way I can get out of not being touched by my uncle is to rub my own poop on my body. Would you not agree? Context explains conduct in this situation. Now, all I'm saying is sometimes you'll see someone, adult or kid, act a certain way and you go, I do not, they are just weird. Maybe they're smart. Maybe this is their coping mechanism. Maybe this is the only way they can get through the day, and what they don't need is behavior modification. That's screwing artificial fruit on the end of the branch. What they need is actually someone to listen, talk, serve, minister. So I'm convinced this is a huge factor, and particularly when it comes to the next generation. I love it when I meet adults that just get this, and they're willing to do the time they need to do to see kids transformed. I'm going to give you one quick case study. I really, really have come to appreciate Jim Sporleader. I don't know if you ever heard of Jim. He's not a famous guy, but Jim has been in education for decades. He just recently retired. The last assignment he had was the principal of Lincoln High School in Walla Walla, Washington. By the way, I just love saying Walla Walla, Washington. It's just fun to say. So Jim was the principal there. He'd started in the classroom, then AP, and then he's a principal. Well, Lincoln High School was an alternative school. You know what an alternative school is? That's a last chance for high school students. They've gotten removed from the normal high school because of bad grades or bad behavior, acting out, addictions, you name it. So the kids in his school are either at risk academically or at risk socially. So he's got a whole school full of troubled kids. And he wanted to be the principal. And he said, when he arrived, after he shook hands with all of his assistant principals, he said, I want to handle the discipline incidents, the disciplinary incidents in this school. So usually that goes to the assistant principal. They were all too happy to turn that over to him. Well, he decided to approach the disciplinary incidents very, very differently than he had in the past. Probably differently than most principals. So if a kid starts acting out in class, let's say a junior in high school, a male student drops a couple of F-bombs in class. That's a no-no. So the kid gets sent to the principal's office. Well, don't you know that kid walking down the hallway is just looking for a fight. He's angry, something set him off, and he's just looking for someone to talk to or fight. He eventually gets down to the principal's office. He gets into Jim's sport leader's office, and Jim's mode of operation was this in Lincoln High School. He wouldn't say a word. In fact, he would just motion with his hand for that young man to sit down in a chair. And he wouldn't talk for a minute or so, just to let emotions kind of calm down. And after the emotions had kind of calmed down and it had been quiet for a little while, Jim would get up from behind his desk, walk around to the front of the desk so there was no barrier between him and the student. And he would sit down in a chair about 3 feet apart from this student who just dropped a couple of F-bombs. And he would lean in and look at him right in the eye. He would say something like this: "Wow, what just happened in there doesn't sound like you. Are you okay? Is there anything going on that might have led to this?" And he usually couldn't even finish his questioning when that kid would just burst into emotion. Dad just left. Mom's on crack. My uncle's abusing my sister. You name it. All I'm saying is Jim at that point was at a place where they were talking heart to heart, not head to head, not will to will. And there was understanding. And Jim said most of the time he still had to hand out an ISS, an in-school suspension, because you can't drop F-bombs in class. But it was after love and understanding at a public high school. Do you hear me? Not a Christian school. And he's loving on this kid. And Jim said, most of the time, this kid would return to class and apologize to everybody for how he'd acted. That doesn't sound like a typical adolescent to me. I'm just saying to you, it's amazing what happens when a grown adult, especially one that they respect and admire, is willing to walk into their life and do something different because they know conduct is explained by context. So let's move forward. I'd like to take the remaining minutes I have and I'd like to talk about the fundamentals of healthy identity. As you think about investing in the next generation, I'm gonna give you some stuff to jot down, to think through, and hopefully to practice, okay? So let's start with this. If you were to ask me, what are the elements of spiritual and emotional health? What are they? I would say there's an innate sense of 4 items that we need to be healthy. In fact, I hope you apply this to your own life. You're a grown adult, but you might go, man, I'm lacking in that area, okay? So I'm gonna give you 4 items. There's a sense of 4 things that we need, and if it's missing, I'm gonna talk about what we often feel inside of us as a symptom, okay? So number 1, innately inside of every human being, there's a need for a sense of worth. We need to feel like there's value in us. I add value when I come to the table, okay? Men, can I talk to you a minute? Ladies, this may apply to you too, but I'm a guy, so I know guys. Guys, do we not tie very much of our identity in our work? In fact, some of us really have a hard time once we retire because our whole sense of identity was drawn from that. I talk to athletes all the time. The moment they get injured, they can't play anymore. Their whole identity is shot. So when we placed our identity in something that can be taken away, it's a little dangerous, but some of your identity is, I feel like there's something of value that I bring. I'm worthwhile. And some of you today might say, in my growing up years, I gotta be honest with you, I didn't feel worthwhile. I never noticed or someone never told me that I had a sense of worth. Now, keep going. If that's missing, we start feeling inferior. I know we don't use the term inferiority complex anymore, but that's how we feel. We feel inferior. We get around other people, we feel intimidated by it because we don't feel worth, okay? Number 2, a second innate sense we have as human beings is a sense of belonging. You guys get this, I think. I need to feel like I belong to a family, to a community, to a church. Many of you came into Pathway, and this is a sense of community for you. In fact, I want to encourage you, if you don't sense community here because you've not gotten involved in a small group, you should get involved in a small group where you know people and they are known and you are known in that small group. We innately have a need, a sense, We innately have a deep sense of belonging. We need that. More and more Americans aren't working at this. A book was written a number of years ago called Bowling Alone, and it was a sociological book on America. We are doing more things alone than ever before. Did you know that? We're living more alone. We're not marrying as much as we did because it's too much work. We're eating alone. More people are dining alone. We have our phone, thank God. But we're doing it alone because this is work. But listen, I believe humanly speaking, it's worth the work. We need to belong. And if we don't feel like we belong, we start feeling insecure. We have feelings of insecurity going on inside of us. Number 3, the third innate sense we have is we need to feel like we're competent. I can do something with my gifts, my talents, my acquired skills that I am competent at this. I can do this better than the average person. I'll never forget my mom and dad. When I was going through my middle school years, mom and dad worked with me on this whole sense of competence. They saw me going through the middle school weird time. You know the middle school weird times, don't you? Okay, we all went through that. I mean, where you're not sure if you're not really a child anymore, but you're not really a grown-up yet. You're just kind of in that in-between stage with acne to boot, okay? And I remember them working with me, pointing out my gifts that I had. I could draw really well, and they pointed out, this is really, you're better than average here, blah, 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 blah. And I believe part of that, I was able to ride a wave because mom and dad had really worked with me on that. If that's missing, we begin to feel inadequate. We have feelings of inadequacy because I don't really feel like I'm super competent at anything really well. And then finally, number 4, we have an innate need of sense of purpose. You know this. We talk about this a lot in America today. There needs to be a sense of mission, a sense of purpose, that I'm living for a reason. There's something I'm supposed to do with this competence, with a group of people that makes me worthy, okay? If that's missing, we start feeling insignificant. My dad turns 89 this year. He's born 1930, and I'm telling you, my mom passed away 15 years ago, and he really misses her. But I love the fact that he is volunteering in the church, still serving. At 89, still doing as much as he can, because he knows purpose is what's keeping him around. Some of you get this if you're retired. Now, all I'm saying is this. These are innate needs. I'd love to see you say, I want to build this in my own life, but I want to build this in a next-gen kid that's coming along that perhaps doesn't even realize these are here. But look for these symptoms, okay? Now, I want to show you a diagram that's going to be I hope, very helpful. I love this diagram. On the screen right now, I'm showing you 2 horizontal lines. Can you see this in the back? The top line, the one that's way up high, represents your potential. It's what you're really capable of pulling off if you went after it. It's what you're really able to do. It's who you really are, okay? This is you at your full potential. The person God really designed you to be. Down here, this line, way below, is your perspective. It's what you think you can do, what you think you can pull off, who you think you really are. Now notice, in most cases, our perspective is way below our potential. You would agree with that, wouldn't you? I think I'm pretty average. We think that, don't we? Come on. Now, did you like the way I did that? Pretty average. Now, watch, you see this little yellow dotted line? I don't know if you can see it in the back. I've got a little yellow dotted line that's kind of going up and down because you have good days and bad days. But this yellow line represents your performance, your day-to-day performance. It goes up and down because you do have good days and bad days. But notice it's pretty much hovering around your perspective because it's impossible to consistently perform in a manner that is inconsistent with the way you see yourself. Even if you're capable of doing amazing things, you will not do amazing things if you don't think you can. True? In fact, it will shock you. See right here, you had a really good day right here. If you're a student, you made 3 A's and 3 people ask you out on a date. It was a great day, okay? But you know what we normally do? We retreat right back down to average because I really don't deserve that. Have you not known people like this? And you go, why do you ambush yourself? Why do you sabotage yourself? Because I don't think I deserve any better. Most of us live here when really we could be living here. And I believe it's up to us adults to get their perspective up to their potential. Can I give you a great example? Sure, Tim. Okay, I will. Viktor Shcherbyakovych is a classic case study of this. You may or may not have heard of this guy. I'm going to tell a story real quick. Viktor, years ago, decades ago actually, defected from the Soviet Union when there was still a communist Soviet Union to England. He came across, they were able to escape the Soviet Union, and they settled in England when he was 5 years old. So he was a kindergartner age kid. And because it was time to start school, Victor was thrust into school in England, a different country, a foreign culture. He didn't know the English language very well at all. You can imagine this was trouble. Well, by the end of the first year in kindergarten, even his classmates started thinking he was stupid, he's slow. By elementary school, he was put in the remedial groups because he was just not showing that he had any kind of potential. By the time he reached high school, one of his high school teachers, sophomore year, grabbed him and pulled him aside to talk to him. And I think he meant to encourage him, but he completely discouraged Victor Serebryakov. He said, Victor, it's okay that you're not as smart as the rest of the kids. Just try not to slow anybody else down. Well, that was it. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. By the end of his sophomore year, Victor dropped out of high school. And for the next 14 years, he just wandered, barely making ends meet at odd jobs. He had a flat, an apartment that he lived in, but he kind of just wandered for 14 years until age 30. And at age 30, he took an aptitude test, an IQ test. And he discovered at age 30 that his IQ was 162. He was a genius. Victor said in his book, I repeat, he said in his book, my life changed almost overnight. In fact, over the next few decades that in his life, he wrote 2 books, patented several inventions, ended up having a lovely family. When he died in the year 2000, he was the president of the Mensa Society. Y'all know what the Mensa Society is? It's a group of geniuses. He was the president of the geniuses. Wow. I mean, that's a good ending, don't you think? Now, can I ask you a question? Think with me. Did Victor all of a sudden get smart at age 30? No, he did not. What changed? Yeah, his perspective. It was in him all the time. He just didn't see it. And the moment he saw it, suddenly opportunity arose. I'll never forget, it was my freshman year of college. This was a revolutionary thing for me. Faith had become a big part of my life. I was trying to make good grades, but faith became a central part of my life. I grabbed my Bible and I grabbed a highlighter and I highlighted every verse in the New Testament that said anything about in Christ, in Him, or with Him. In Christ, in Him, or with Him. Those are our positional scriptures. I started highlighting those, and I drew a little diagram of myself, and I started to write down all things that God said was inside of me. Righteousness, gifts, da-da-da-da-da. It was a list. And every morning when I was combing my hair and shaving my face, I'd say those things out loud. It revolutionized who I thought I was. Somebody says, well, you're just brainwashing yourself. You're right. I washed my brain, thank God. Finally told myself the truth. You follow what I'm saying? So I don't, you call that brainwash? I like who I am much better than who I was. All I did was change what I thought was inside, change what I believed was inside, and it is. So, having said that, I want to give you that Joyce Brothers quote again. Dr. Joyce Brothers was an incredible psychologist, but look what she said. It is impossible to consistently perform in a manner that is inconsistent with the way you see yourself. So let me close this way. I want to give you 4 things to jot down. In fact, I would call this identity capital. I want to help you build identity capital so you can pass it on to the young people in your life, okay? So I believe there's 4 ingredients that make up our identity capital. There may be 400, but I know 4, and I don't have time for 400. So here we go. 4 items that make up your identity capital, all right? Number 1, awareness. I think our sense of identity begins to take shape when we become aware of who we really are. And by that I mean, I need to be able to say, I know my personality, my strengths, and the unique qualities, or the qualities that make me unique. Okay? I understand I've got some talents, I've got a style about myself that people think is quirky, but this is what makes me me. But I'm aware. Self-awareness is step 1. If you meet with teenagers, let's say, you need to be, go get coffee and just maybe have them take some assessments. But start the conversation where you begin to help them identify what's inside. I am aware of what's inside. Did you all know that back in 1962, I believe it was, the largest single chunk of gold ever discovered by mankind was discovered in Bangkok, Thailand. And it was an accident. There was a big, gigantic concrete statue of Buddha sitting up in Middle Square, Thailand. And the statue had been there for so many years, it was really dirty, weathered, stained. empty Coke cans with the base and gum wrappers and trash. And so a priest nearby said, we need to pick the statue up, move it inside, and we need to clean it up. So he got a crew out there to pick up the statue and start moving it inside. But as they were moving it, it dropped to the ground and it cracked. Now, it'd been there forever, so they were just mortified that this statue that had been there forever was now cracked, until one of the workers said, wait, look inside the crack. And that's when they realized this concrete statue of Buddha was only a shell. Inside that shell was a gigantic, 8-foot-tall, solid chunk of gold. Needless to say, the very bad day turned into a very good day for these guys, okay? Now, here's what I'm saying. I think that's a picture of us and students. We got a shell, and we're pretty much judging everything by the shell, are we not? Come on. You're weathered, you're old, you're stained. Inside, I believe there's a God-given chunk of gold inside of every one of us. I really believe that. And inside these kids in Generation Z, there's incredible gifts, and they're savvy, they're smart, they're probably gonna cure cancer and solve the AIDS virus. All I'm saying is it's there, but if we don't know it's there. So it starts here. We've got to become aware of what's inside. All right, number 2. The second part of this identity capital is affirmation. I believe part of our identity gets strong when I hear those I respect affirm my value, and that I must learn to affirm myself. So, in other words, you would agree with this, wouldn't you? When someone you admired growing up, some coach, some youth pastor, some uncle, whatever, or maybe it was a parent that did it well, said, I see this in you. I tell you what, there were a number of times when my son Jonathan, who's now 26, when he's 13, 14 years old, I saw him waffling, and there were several times we'd go out on trips, just father, son, and I'd say, Jonathan, you have it in you to be a man. I can tell it's in there. And I could see him perk up. I won't go into some of the stories, but it was so, and I'm just one voice, but I'm dad. And just him hearing, you have it in you to be a man. Because I know young teenagers are going, I don't know if I will ever figure out what it means to be a man. This is what we feel today, ladies, it's true. And masculinity is being redefined, is it not? And we're trying to figure, what does it mean to be a man? So I'm just saying there needs to be affirmation. And eventually, you need to be able to learn to affirm yourself. In other words, people need to say it to you until finally you go, I'm able to speak the truth to me. I just thought of something funny. I have a couple of lines. My wife hears me talking to myself all the time. I do, I talk to myself. And when she goes, what are you talking to yourself for? I go, sweetheart, there's 2 reasons why I talk to myself. Number 1, I love talking to intelligent people. And number 2, I love hearing intelligent people talk. She rolls her eyes and walks away. Anyway, okay, so affirmation. Number 3, association. I think part of a healthy sense of identity is us becoming a part or associating with a community, a family, some group. We will not develop a healthy sense of identity in isolation. I don't think human beings can do this. If they can, it's 1 in a billion. So here's what I need to feel connected to a family or a community. I need to belong. If you were from England, Ireland, Scotland centuries ago, you had a family crest. Remember seeing a family crest? It was this neat shield that had emblems on it and icons. It stood for your family name. In fact, your family name was everything back then. We're kind of broken now and dysfunctional in many ways, but family name was huge. That was the association I had with the Elmores or the Smiths or whatever. I'm saying you and those kids around you need to feel connected to community. And by the way, can I add, I'm not against social media. It cannot be a virtual community. That doesn't do the trick. We've seen this. Some good things happen through virtual connections. I think we need to be face-to-face with people who love us and that we love, people that know us and we know. In fact, if you're saying, I don't think I'm connected, this church may not be the total answer, but this church has small groups. It's got places to serve. And I'm just saying, plug in. Find a community that you belong to. Can I get an amen from the choir? Okay, all right. And then finally, the last one, achievement. Meaning, for me to have a healthy, robust sense of identity, I need to face challenges and see that I add value through my strengths. In other words, moms, listen to me, moms and dads. I don't think good self-esteem and good sense of identity comes from just us just telling them they're awesome when they're sitting around playing a video game. You're awesome for putting the fork in the dishwasher. I don't think that's going to build a healthy sense of identity. I think, pardon my French, we need to get up off our butts and do something with the strengths that are inside of us that adds value to somebody else. Men, can I talk to you? Ladies, listen in. Men, there's something God hardwired inside of us that when we go out and work and use our gifts and provide for a family, we just feel like the knight in shining armor comes out. And when we're not able to do that, men do very bad things. Ladies, it may be the same for your gender too, that you need to be somehow we need to be able to achieve something. So it's not all here, but it's 1/4 of it. Okay, I'm out of time, so I need to close this way. I would love to see you work on you, but even more than that, work on the next gen individuals around you and start talking and experiencing things that would build this sense of identity in them. Now, a few years ago, I met an incredible teacher that you might have heard of. She's out in California. Her name is Erin Gruwell. She had a movie made about her life called Freedom Riders. Anybody see Freedom Riders a number of years ago? Yeah, great movie. Okay, well, I'm about to show you a clip. Erin Gruwell and I have interacted quite a bit. We had her speak at one of our conferences. But Erin said, I just began to use my class and the subject I taught to build identity in these kids. So you need to know she taught at-risk kids. Most of the high schoolers that were in her class were gang members. And by the way, it was like the United Nations. There were Hispanics, there were Asians, there were African Americans. I think there was one white guy. And they were all part of gangs, almost all of them. And they were just at each other's throats. Most of them didn't expect to live to 18. There was so much violence on the streets and drug trafficking and so forth. Well, there she was teaching literature and English, which they did not have any interest in. And she began to use it as a platform. And for an entire year, she loved on these kids and loved on these kids and loved on these kids. The clip you're about to watch is from a true story. In fact, Erin told me this clip doesn't even do justice what happened this day. But I want you to see first day of school, year 2, that she's in front of these same students. She'd had them write diaries, keep journals. They started interacting with each other. And she built a new identity in these students. Here's what it might look like. This is Erin Gruwell, Freedom Riders.
Ready?
Hey, Miss G.
Hi. Hi.
What's up?
Okay, guys, gals, listen up. This is what I want you to do. I want each of you to step forward and take one of these Borders bags, which contain the 4 books we're going to read this semester. All right. They're very special books, and they each remind me in some way of each of you. But before you take the books, I want you to take one of these glasses of sparkling cider, and I want each of you to make a toast. We're each gonna make a toast for change. And what that means is, from this moment on, every voice that told you you can't is silenced. Every reason that tells you things will never change disappears. And the person you were before this moment, that person's turn is over. Now it's your turn. Okay? Okay. You ready to get this party going on? What? What's the deal here?
Man, I have a boyfriend since I was like 11, you know?
I believe it.
Okay, well, I was always the person that was gonna get pregnant before I turned 16 and drop out. Like my mom. Ain't gonna happen.
Nobody ever listens to a teenager. No, everybody thinks you should be happy just because you're young. And they don't see the wars that we fight every single day. And one day my war will end. And I will not die. And I will not tolerate abuse from anyone. I am strong.
My mom's kicked me out when I got jumped into the gang life. But I like her to see me graduate. I like to be 18.
Miss G, can I read something from my diary?
That'd be great.
Who is he?
Man, he's been with us since freshman year, fool.
What's his name?
I don't know.
The summer was the worst summer in my short 14 years of life. It all started with a phone call. My mother was crying and begging, asking for more time, as if she were gasping for her last breath of air. She held me as tight as she could and cried. Her tears hit my shirt like bullets and told me we were being evicted. She kept apologizing to me. I thought I have no home. I should have asked for something less expensive at Christmas. On the morning of the eviction, a hard knock on the door woke me up. The sheriff was there to do his job. I looked up at the sky, waiting for something to happen. My mother has no family to lean on, no money coming in. Why bother coming to school or getting good grades if I'm homeless? The bus stops in front of the school. I feel like throwing up. I'm wearing clothes from last year, some old shoes and no new haircut. I kept thinking I'd get laughed at. Instead, I'm greeted by a couple of friends who were in my English class last year. And it hits me, Mrs. Gerwell, my crazy English teacher from last year, is the only person that made me think of hope. Talking with friends about last year's English and our trips, I began to feel better. I received my schedule and the first teacher is Mrs. Gerwell in room 203. I walk into the room and feel as though all the problems in life are not so important anymore. I am home.
Yes, you are.
So, Erin Gruelle taught English, but she built those 4 qualities we just talked about. Awareness, association, all 4 of those things. The class was only a platform to build a great sense of identity in her kids. So let me close this way. Back in May, I got to visit West Point. I had a day where I was just surveying the classes, the cadets, the lieutenant colonels. It was an incredible day, but I watched a bunch of 18 to 22-year-olds working on their identity. I was blown away. I didn't expect to see this. They were building leaders at this school who were going to be officers when they graduated. But it seemed like every class, every conversation, they were building the being, not just the doing. I think they've come to believe what I just said. If I get the being right, the doing will be right. While I was there, I met Trey Grinley. Trey was a senior. He was a cadet. And I was taken by Zach Thomas. He's an alum. And so the 3 of us posed for this picture. I had mentored Zach, and Zach had mentored Trey. So it was a three-generation mentoring thing going on. But I'll never forget a meal I had with Trey. It was brief, but it was powerful. I talked to him, and I felt like I was talking to a peer. He was very thoughtful, very reflective. But when I asked him, I said, man, you're about to graduate. What are you going to do next? What are you going to do with your life? That was the typical question we ask of college graduates. He said, oh, Dr. Elmer. And by the way, there was not a hint of disrespect. He said, Dr. Elmer, I'm not concerned about that right now. I'm working on the man I want to become. And when I get that down, I know the doing will take care of itself. May his tribe increase. Amen. Let's pray. Father, I just ask now that you'd help us when we leave this place. Remember what we've talked about. Put us in the path of some student, some young professional perhaps. And I pray that you give us divine appointments. Give us the time we need, the margins we need to talk and listen, swap stories. And I pray we would begin to build identity capital in this next generation. And then, God, as a result of that, I pray they will be the generation that changes this world. I put these people in your hands, and I pray this all in Jesus' name. God bless. Amen. Thank you.